In today's video, we'll discuss Luka Doncic and why the NBA is absolutely terrified of him right now. So without further ado, let's get into it. Luka Doncic is unsurprisingly playing at an MVP level, and as of right now, he's third in the MVP race. And while many basketball fans think he should be the frontrunner, it's still pretty early, and he has more than enough time to get to that number one spot. Plus, he's been averaging a ridiculous 36 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists over his last 7 games. So yeah, if he keeps this up, he'll most likely find himself at the top of the race. And as for his team, the Dallas Mavericks, they're 9th in win percentage, 18th in points per game, 17th in field goal percentage, 3rd in three-pointers made, 29th in assists, 2nd in turnovers, while also being the 22nd ranked defense. And while those team numbers are a little all over the place, they have been playing great as of late and are above 500. And the more and more they win games, the better the chance Luka will have at winning or at least moving up the board for MVP. But why should the NBA be terrified of Luka, you might ask? Well, let's explain and go over his numbers and maybe you'll get a better understanding. Starting with his finishing, Luka is 2nd in the NBA in drives per game, driving about 21.4 times per game, and that's just how he operates. He loves getting into the paint to make plays. And as a defense, that's the last thing you want is for Doncic to get many paint touches. But as you know, that's a lot easier said than done. And when it comes to percentage, Luka is 4th in the NBA in drive percentage, shooting about 63% on 9 attempts per game. He averages 15 points off of drives alone, which ranks him 2nd in the entire league. So he has absolutely dominated once he gets inside. And let's not forget how big of a guy Luka actually is. He's 6'7" and weighs a solid 230 to 235 pounds. So he's heavier than the majority of point guards, shooting guards, and even small forwards. And on some nights, depending on which team he's facing, he can be the heaviest player on the floor. And he uses that size and strength to be very physical with opposing defenders. One of his signature finishing moves is his slow step. It's where he dribbles to the rim at a fast pace, then right before he's met by a defender, he decelerates. And unless you're a highly intelligent defender or just a great defender in general, it's impossible to stop. Because he obviously doesn't do it all the time, he mixes it up, so when he does do it, the move is ultra effective and catches his defender off guard. As a defender, it completely throws off your rhythm, especially for the defenders who rely on purely instinct and anticipation. Another way he gets his buckets inside is just by playing bully ball. It is never a wise decision to leave him one-on-one with a guard, or anyone for that matter. And add that with his genius ability to draw fouls, and you have a player who's nearly impossible to stop once he touches the paint. And just like any other elite guard in the NBA, he has a great floater, which just adds to his bag of moves and tricks. And something to mention is how he's currently 4th in the NBA in post-ups per game possessions, while also being 4th in points per post-up. That's just insane. Because he's a guard, and every player throughout the top 37 in that stat is either a big forward or a center. When it comes to mid-range scoring, he really doesn't look to get into the mid-range for buckets. Whenever he drives, he's going straight to the basket. But when he does shoot them, he's still pretty effective. And from beyond the arc, he's shooting 35% on 8 attempts per game, 43% on catch-and-shoot threes, but he really doesn't get many catch-and-shoot opportunities. But he's also number 1 and leads the NBA in pull-up shooting threes, shooting 35% on 7 attempts per game. So while Luka isn't necessarily a next-level three-point shooter, he's a really good one. And he's so talented, he really doesn't need a great three ball to put up points. But when it's falling, he is hard to stop and will drop a 50 or even a 60 piece on you in a heartbeat. He's just been playing phenomenal, and his performance in Dallas's December 27th overtime win over the New York Knicks was one that had never been seen in an NBA game before. Luka recorded a stat line of 60 points, 21 rebounds, 10 assists, 2 steals, 1 blocked shot, and 2 three-pointers. And to add on to that, he dropped 35 points, 12 rebounds, 13 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks, and 4 three-pointers in a win over the Houston Rockets just 2 nights after that game. So while he isn't known as a great shooter from behind the arc, we dare you to find an NBA player out there that'll leave him wide open.
5 seconds. It's going to take some Luka magic to save the possession. And that's what it is!
But now let's talk about the more flashy part of his game. his playmaking. Luka is averaging 8.7 assists per game, which ranks him 5th in the entire league. And he's even 3rd in secondary assists and 5th in potential assists. So labeling him as an elite passer is just an understatement. And when it comes to passing ability, we only have Jokic, LeBron, Halliburton, CP3, and maybe Trae Young over him. Luka Doncic is one of the few players in the league who has simply perfected the art of dismantling defenses because of his mastery of vision and quick floor scanning. His playmaking ability is remarkably advanced for a player his age, who has only been in the NBA for 5 seasons. He can throw any pass in the book, and when you have a dynamic scorer who's just as good as a facilitator as a passer, you're going to have a lot of problems if you're a defender. He is truly a wizard, and other than Nikola Jokic, he may throw the most flashy passes, and they're extremely accurate as well. And his ability to drive and kick is amazing, and similar to LeBron, he always seems to get the ball wherever he wants to, and that mainly has something to do with their height, but also it has a lot to do with the amazing feel, touch, awareness, and overall IQ they have. It's just remarkable. And this is why you can't ever really take him out of the game, because yeah, there will be some nights where his shots are off, or maybe he's going up against a really elite defender like a Herbert Jones or Ben Simmons, and while most players would just disappear or not be productive, he can impact the game with passing, especially in the pick and roll. And we don't think there's a better pick and roll team than the Mavericks. You could say a healthy Lakers or Cavaliers could give them a run for their money, but not in our opinion. The Mavericks are the most lethal pick and roll team in the NBA, and it's all because of Luka Magic. Now let's flip sides of the court and talk about his defense. And before we take a deep dive into his defense and give our opinions, this is what Luka had to say about his own defense this season. Quote, "People are not going to admit it, but I think this year I've really taken a big step defensively," Doncic told Brad Townsend of the Dallas Morning News. "I don't need people to believe. I believe in myself. I think I've been playing defense way better than the first 4 years, and I think I've taken a huge step forward." He is certainly better than last season, but his play defensively has been somewhat inconsistent. He does have great hands and anticipation, allowing him to rack up a lot of steals and deflections, but he's never going to be great on the perimeter. He has a tendency to give up ugly blow-bys because of his lack of lateral quickness. But nonetheless, getting Doncic to an average level of defense would be a substantial and absolute huge improvement, and a huge win in the eyes of the Mavericks coaching staff as well as Mavericks fans. As of right now, he's 8th in deflections per game and 7th in steals per game, and he already has 123 total deflections, which ranks him 5th in the NBA. So while many trash his defense, he isn't as bad as everyone thinks, and this is what his head coach, Jason Kidd, had to say about his defense. Quote, "He wants to guard guys with the ball, and so that helps our defense, but we're also still in the mode of protecting one another. That's how we're built defensively. That doesn't mean that Luka's always on the ball or we're always helping when he's on the ball. He's coming up with those steals on the backside, which shows that he's engaged," he said. Yeah, Jason Kidd is absolutely right, and no one's asking Luka to play lockdown defense like Drew Holiday for 30 minutes per night. But as a superstar, it is important that you show some effort and engagement on that end of the court, because your team only goes as far as you will go, and if they see that their leader is slacking on defense, they most likely will do the same. And while the Mavericks don't have tons of defensive talent, which hence why they're ranked 22nd, they do have Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, Josh Green, and JaVale McGee, as well as Maxi Kleber, who are all good defenders who can help assist Luka on the defensive end. But the numbers don't lie. Luka has been a solid defender this year, and given how bad he was when he first stepped into the league, it's a wonderful sight to see. Overall, Luka Doncic has been dominant, and he's 2nd in the NBA in triple-doubles and 7th in the NBA in double-doubles. He's doing it all for the Mavericks, and remember, he's only 23 years old, so this is someone who can dominate for the next decade and so on. And if you're on an opposing team who has to face this kid, you are absolutely terrified. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.